My name is Brant Hubbard. I am the CEO and founder of RHONDOS, and it is my distinct pleasure today to introduce your speakers, one of which is sneaking up behind me right now.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Let me get you a screen.
So we've got two speakers today, and then we have the Splunk Yoda, Dave Clausen. He's the man with the amazing shoes in the left here. Hold your shoes up for a second. Can you believe it? He mapped to the new Splunk colors. Right? Round of applause for the shoes. The Splunk Yoda, Dave Clausen, is the technical liaison at Splunk for everything having to do with SAP. So he's going to be here to ask him questions after the session or during the Q&A. But our two speakers today are from 3M Corporation. Does anyone know about the 7 degrees of separation with Kevin Bacon? Yeah, Kevin Bacon. So 3M has 10 feet between you and a 3M product. So if you're holding one of these, there's some glue in there from a 3M product. There's glue in there. There's glue in those seats. Those panels are made by 3M. Everywhere you go in the world, every human is on average 10 feet away from a 3M product. How cool is that? 58,000 SKUs. And from 3M today, it's my pleasure to introduce Michael Flint. He's got 22 years of IT experience. 18 years ago when he was at Procter & Gamble, he got his MBA. And he did that so he could differentiate himself and be a liaison between the business and the technologists. And that's one of the reasons that he had the courage to do what we're going to see today, which is to mix business data with time-stamped Splunk data for a new use case that's never been done before. So these types of things take that business and technology mind. The first .conf that Michael went on was last year, and he heard the use case around what you could do with SAP data. And on the Uber ride back to the airport, he called his boss and he said, "Hey, I think we have to go a new direction." And now fast forward to today, and he's going to be speaking to you. With him is Nathan Carr, who's got 8 years of experience. He's a DevOps expert. He always wanted to work at 3M because of their innovation. He heard they were going to start DevOps and automation, and he got his chance. And he partnered up with Michael to do the use case you're going to see today. Nathan's going to do the technical part of the presentation. So I asked Nathan, what's the number one thing that surprised you about Splunk? And he said, people always tell me at work that some things can't be done, especially with SAP, which they say is a black box. And with Splunk, I'm able to prove them wrong. With that, I'm going to welcome up Michael Flint and Nathan Carr. Let's give it up.
Here. Where's my clicker? Forward-looking statement. We're going to spend the next 20 minutes reading every word on this slide. No. I am Michael Flint. Couple quick things about me that Brant didn't share. I have a one-eyed Chihuahua who came from California and now lives in Minnesota, and he loves the winters. I also have 2 children, a 17-year-old senior in high school she's preparing for college, and my son is 14 and he's also in high school. So I got 2 high school-age kids, and that keeps me kind of busy.
Yeah, brief things. My background is mainly in infrastructure and full stack development. I liked having my hands in both areas, and so DevOps and this area was really the way that let me have my hand in all the different cookie jars, I like to say. Otherwise, fun fact, I recently got married about a month ago. So
congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, before I read every word on this slide, I need you guys to be a little interactive with me. I want to know how many of you are Splunk admins. Raise your hand, please. How many of you as Splunk admins, keep your hand up, and I want to see, you can put your hand down if you do not have SAP in your environment. Okay, only a few went down. Now, all hands down. I want to know how many of you work with SAP directly at your company. Do I have any SAP Basis Administrators? You guys are heroes. Sorry, I was a Basis Administrator for all of 22 of those 22 years that I worked with SAP. Of course, I was a manager and had large teams and all those fun things, but once you're a Basis Administrator, you never get your hands off the system until they take all your access away. 3M. Hopefully all of you know a little bit of something about 3M already. We have 4 main business groups: consumer business, an electronics and engineering business, a healthcare business, and an industrial business. 4 is a new number for us. It used to be 5, and they combined a couple together. Our focus at 3M is innovation. We're known as being one of the most innovative companies on the planet. We focus on developing disruptive innovations, things that really change the world. Mike Roman, our current CEO, likes to say it like this. He says, at 3M, we use science to improve lives and help solve the world's toughest challenges. I just want to add a couple extra words on the end of that statement. I want to say that we help solve the world's toughest challenges using data. 3M, as you can see, is a $33 billion company, and we've got 90,000 employees. We've got, let me back up. And I didn't lean on anything either, did you see that? 117,000 patents, 100 plus straight years of paying dividends, so we've got a long history. That long history can create some challenges for an IT department. If any of you have worked for large corporations, you might know what we're talking about.
And some of those operational challenges that we'll see, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. Being that large of a company and rolling out SAP in that way creates some of these that are flying up on the screen right now, trying to keep my timing in check. IT outages and unplanned downtime. Those can lead to long times to detect and resolve and a difficulty time in the crisis room. Unreachable data becomes a big part of that as well. Not everything is together inside of SAP. You have different modules. And so finding ways you can break down those siloed support organizations and tie them together without having to bring everyone into one massive war room and deal with it there. So we wanted to move forward with trying to solve these, leveraging Splunk.
Does anybody in this room have trouble getting data out of SAP to do things with it? My hand's going really high. I don't actually have trouble anymore, and we're going to tell you about that. Let's just imagine that you're this big company, and imagine that you have to ship product out to your customers. So of course you got trucks, and you got to load trucks, right? But we're not going to really talk about loading trucks. We're going to talk about what do you do with that stuff once you put it on the truck. So you got your truck, and it's going to leave and it's going to go to your customer. Well, you need to tell your customer that something's coming. And what we use in the SAP world to tell a customer that something's coming is something called an Advanced Shipment Notification, or an ASN for short. So SAP needs to generate and send the ASN to the customer, and the customer has to receive it. It's important for the customer to receive it because that's what tells them to prepare their systems. And we're not supposed to have timing on these. Yeah. That's what tells them to prepare their systems to receive the shipment. If they don't receive the Advanced Shipment Notification, they actually cannot receive the shipment. So imagine that you've got this huge truck full of a few $1 million of goods that's on its way to a delivery, and the Advanced Shipment Notification is stuck in one of your integrations. It hasn't gone anywhere. Now you don't know this because the person who monitors that queue, well, he's out today. And actually, he only looks at it on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and maybe once on Sunday when he feels like it, right? If we're lucky, he actually looks at it once a week. So you don't even know that this thing is stuck. When the truck arrives, you've got a truck driver who has to do something with those goods. What does he do? He goes to a parking lot, he drops his trailer, and he drives off, because his time's valuable. Now we're paying for a trailer that we've got storage on. And we're not just paying rental fees, you might even be paying some type of fine, because you're not supposed to have ownership of that trailer, you rented it. And you rented it without a contract, hence the fines. So these Advanced Shipment Notifications are important. We need to know when they fail, and we have to be able to react to it quickly. So we're gonna do a couple of make-believes with you. Try to help you see some of the pain that maybe we've gone through in previous years. So here's how some of it goes. Hey, Nate, you remember I was telling you about that customer with that order? He called me up and was telling me it was a big problem.
Yeah, we had 6 different teams we had to pull in together for a room. It turned out it was just a data structure issue, but we had to pull 6 teams and even some other techs in to get that solved.
But Nate, that guy's order is a month old.
Yeah.
It's been stuck for a month?
Yeah.
How come we didn't know about that? And another thing.
This has been a really crazy morning. The phone's been ringing off the hook, and we're trying to figure out why.
Tell me about it. I've been stuck in a code orange all day. I'm getting nothing done.
I think it actually might be related to your code orange. None of these customers are able to access our site and get status of their orders. So they keep lining up in the queues, and we don't have the call volume to handle that.
Can you guys imagine that?
Let me tell you about this other one. First call of the day, guy's screaming at me. He's trying to deliver a truck full of critical materials to the Acme company that needs it ASAP because they have a huge customer they need to order for.
Tell me about it. Oh, yeah, that's the one where the account manager called me. Yeah, he was telling me that if we didn't get this in his doc right away, he's thinking about going to another supplier.
Yeah, we had to work through a bunch of different teams just to figure out the paperwork and get contact with the doc manager.
Another data issue?
Yep.
And interface error?
Yep.
I don't even know. I don't want to know how much that's going to cost us. You're not going to believe this one, Nate.
Go ahead.
Well, got a call right before lunch. I think the people in the other building could hear this guy yelling at me.
I don't even want to know what that was about.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to tell you anyway. You know, he spent hours trying to figure out why they couldn't get an invoice to go through their system. Turns out they already processed it.
Whoops.
And paid it.
Whoops.
Twice.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, it gets better.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They actually returned those goods like 3 hours after they got them. Wonder why we didn't know about that one.
Clearly something's up altogether. A ton of our orders were running into issues, and people are getting them for more than just a second time.
Oh, come on, Nate. This is easy. We're just going to get a whole bunch of people, throw them in a room. We might have to order some pizza, but they'll figure it out by tomorrow morning.
So I'm sure a lot of you have had similar issues like that over the time, of whether that's data issues or other issues like that. We wanted to go over, before we jump into more detail, just a high-level overview of how we've built our AIOps architecture, leveraging Splunk and PowerConnect and other tools like that. So at the bottom, you'll see we're pulling a bunch of different data into Splunk for real-time analysis. For the SAP connector, we're using Splunk, we're using PowerConnect, which from a joint venture between RHONDOS and Brave New World have allowed us to pull data out of SAP. Application logs, performance metrics, and server logs. Having these all together, we can now start communicating and figuring out across our environment what we need to start alerting on. To trigger up to ITSM, we have a layer in there for Omnibus, which does deduplication for us on the ticketing side, so we don't have multiple tickets cut. ITSM, for us, we use currently HP Service Manager, but that allows us to do some other changes, and that might change down the road. Then the ITSM can then trigger to Phantom, where we can do ticket analysis, diagnosis, and remediation. Now, we went with Phantom because of that ticket analysis. If we have just a little bit of data, we can actually have Phantom run out, do a bunch of diagnosis, and enrich that ticket and send it back if we need to send it off to a support technician. For the diagnosis or remediation part, we could have it just do the diagnosis and send back an alert, or for remediation, we can actually have it reach into the SAP environment through the SAP gateway that we have into our environment to use Athos bots, which is a bot framework created by Accenture. You'll notice we have ITSI in there for anomaly detection. We can start managing and view glass tables to see are there anomalies popping up in our environment, and if need be, we would like to start using Phantom to do that automation.
So as the IT operations manager at 3M, I have responsibility for our entire data center and all of our ERP operations. At 3M, we've spent over 7 years implementing SAP so far, and we're not done yet. Because we're not done yet, we found it pretty challenging to stay on top of all of the operational needs, the care and feeding of a large SAP implementation. Having to deal with things like middleware systems and increasing transactional volumes has complicated things as well. There's constant patching requirements. There's needs for us to stay ahead of regulatory requirements. Again, that all just complicates the operational side of the house. The fact that our developers are constantly building the next product increment, and their concern is delivery for the next quarter, again, we don't get a whole lot of their attention in order to fix operational issues. We needed really a nimble monitoring and event management strategy and process. And as Nate had mentioned, we found PowerConnect that allowed us to get data out of the SAP system so that we can aggregate it into a larger database where we can query and search and understand what's going on across our entire environment. Now we correlate network, operating system, database, application, and business process events with each other. We more quickly understand where an issue is coming from, and sometimes we even know what caused the issue. PowerConnect's given us an extensible framework for addressing our monitoring and event management in SAP, and it allows us to use those events to drive our ERP automation program at the infrastructure, application, and business process layers. I'm going to talk a little bit more in a few minutes about that business process layer. But for us, the journey started with our basis team. Simply doing infrastructure monitoring or SAP application monitoring. Basis team members will spend hours and hours looking through different transaction codes and understanding what's happening with an SAP system. Or you can spend days, weeks, and months creating a solution in another SAP tool and use that. But we found something that worked a little bit faster and better for us.
Moving on to the automation side of it, we chose Phantom to use with Splunk for a couple different reasons. And our slides are way off the hook. So we chose it for our automation orchestration engine. One of the big things for us for our SAP environment in our support organization is not everyone knows how to code and do those automation and write that automation. Phantom allows us to have our developers and some of our support technicians actually doing programming through the GUI. So with Phantom, we can have them build those Lego blocks out, build that Python code in the background, and store it in a Git repo. With Phantom, since it deals with everything through an API, we can actually integrate with endless integrations. If we needed to talk to a system that doesn't have an API, we can leverage another RPA tool like Blue Prism. We have repeatable workflows. So now we can say when these alerts are triggered, we send it in with a specific label in the container that gets passed to Phantom, and Phantom can just run those playbooks right off of that. And then triage and ticket resolution, having a system that we can just build out and have run automatically and populate any tickets if need be. It allows us to talk to SQL without having a specific tool that just deals with SQL. It allows us to talk to the Active Directory, SAP, and more. And we chose it because it really is just an orchestration engine that allows us to talk to other applications. I think of it like an octopus with a bunch of tentacles. It's the one running the show in the background. For Athos, we needed a way that we can actually run and automate actions inside of SAP. We discovered a tool from Accenture called Athos, and it really is just an ABAP framework. Similar to Spring Boot or any other kind of framework you'd use out in normal programming day-to-day, we can actually leverage that framework to build bots. So it has a bunch of different API calls built into it that we can write in ABAP and deploy out into our system. So we can have reusable and secure and stable ways of talking to our system. To reach inside of Athos, we actually call right through our web methods gateway, and we have a way to generate a my SSO SAP token, SSO2 SAP token on the fly, so that way we're not sending a password every time. We can actually automatically rotate our AD passwords, pull it from CyberArk, and then do that call if we need to. So we have reusable methods, we have a secure way to do this, and a single integration point into our SAP environment. We call one API inside of SAP, the Athos handles that and runs whatever bot was passed in. And then the embedded security by design with those rotating passwords and everything being secured and encrypted.
So this brings us to IT service intelligence. It likes to double click on us, I think. So we use ITSI as a way of getting a view into the multiple layers of data that we care about. I mentioned earlier that we go after the infrastructure, the application, and the business process layers. And we do it in that order from the bottom up. You can almost think of it as a triangle, right? If I start top down and I identify a business process, there will be things that are dependent underneath it at the application layer in order to deliver that business process. And it starts to look like a nice pyramid as you come down, because your business processes depend on applications which depend on infrastructure. And your infrastructure, the dependencies that you have to track may be many and varied in order to deliver an application, in order to deliver even a single business process. That said, we build those type of models, and we have one being displayed up here on the screen today. This one that we're showing is actually the very first one that I felt like it was my birthday when this thing went live. It took us a little bit of time to build it, maybe 3 or 4 weeks, a couple of sprint cycles. And this is for a single distribution site. This is tracking the business process for outbound deliveries. Think of an outbound delivery as, again, right, that shipment that's going to go to somebody. We have up on the left side of the picture here, all of the business steps, right, all the process steps that we take are generating a health score, and we show the health score for each one of those steps. Up to the right is, of course, the service breakdown, right, the tree that shows the services. What was so exciting about this use case for us is it was the first one that really gave us an ability to show our customers, the people in the business support area, what we could do for them with Splunk. It really took me about 3 months to convince the first manager that he wanted us to build this for him. And as soon as we showed him this, I had 7 more managers banging down my door asking when I could build theirs. We're now talking about expanding this to all of our other delivery, our other warehouses and manufacturing sites. We're also talking about doing inbound deliveries followed by the advanced shipment notifications. Here you see another model that kind of shows, right, the tools that we're using to orchestrate operational monitoring and event management and AI ops. The automation capabilities that come through Phantom are leveraged by the data that we feed into it through Splunk forwarders and through SAP PowerConnect. But ultimately, for us, the real meat of this story is all about getting data out of SAP in a way that it makes it usable within Splunk, so it has to be time series data that we can query within Splunk. And then our ability to actually leverage off of that knowledge that we've gained to do automated remediation through those Athos bots on the other end. It's all orchestrated and managed by a Splunk platform. Now, it can either be enterprise, which gives us the ability to create an alert, generate a ticket, and have some work performed, or it can be through ITSI, which has that ability to create our events. At 3M, we're taking all of our support teams through the journey of first understanding their data. We make them work in enterprise first, and we make them work with dashboards and alerts. They have to help us understand what thresholds they need and what they care about. Then we will introduce them to ITSI, get into KPIs, and the more advanced concepts.
So here's just a quick example of an actual issue that had popped up for our technical monitoring and an impact that what could have been a 4 to 6 hour performance impact, we had no impact to performance. So at 3 o'clock, we get a notification that UP2 is at 50%. 3:05, it continues to increases until we get an alert that the NRIV shadow table lock has happened. On that, we now know that we can respond to that and start getting that fixed. By 3:40, we have a response time of getting that all cleared up, so now the table lock's gone, and we can have it solved by 3:42. No impact to performance, not hurting our customers. Previously, this table lock could have happened inside of SAP and infected down the road our customers as more and more people cannot access that. So that's just one example that we've had.
Yeah, and I'll just highlight, because this was a really painful experience that I went through. It was a period of about 2 or 3 weeks in the beginning of March of this year when we had 3 outages in a row related to this issue. And as soon as we built the monitoring in Splunk and started alerting the basis team proactively, they were able to resolve the situation every time without any impact. So there's enough lead time built into this that we're calling this a predictive capability. We're actually solving for a problem before the problem exists, before anybody notices an impact.
Mm-hmm. Next, so some of the benefits that we've gotten so far for AI ops, our goal attainment, we've reduced unplanned downtime by 64% so far having implemented this. One thing I want to call out on the graph is you'll notice that between January to July, we had a lot more unplanned downtime incidents. We started ingesting stuff with PowerConnect in probably February officially?
February, March.
March area. But when we started pulling that in, one thing we realized is this data is really complex. So we need to really start understanding that data and figuring out how to get alerts set for the correct things. Working with RHONDOS and Splunk, we were able to actually perform that and get that done. So now we understood our data, we had the correct alerts, and now you can see a drop in our unplanned downtime as those alerts started getting created. And incidents like Michael had just added on right there, that we could get those solved right away. For some of our achieved benefits, we have automatic critical notifications, which we touched on, reduced mean time to detect by 80 to 90% for our critical focus areas at the current time, mean time to resolve 70 to 80%, and we'd have reduced RCA costs, as well as reduced war room costs. One thing with the war room costs I want to call out, it's not just the cost of getting people all into a war room and dealing with things that way, it's also the amount of code oranges and code blues that we've had that we've reduced down and impacting our performance that way. Going forward, we're not done on this journey. It's definitely a journey and not the destination. So we have some of our anticipated benefits are automated resolutions, really leveraging Phantom a lot more to get those resolutions kicked off right away inside of SAP. Predictive operations. We want to start leveraging ITSI more as we're building out all those different glass tables and views. We want to start leveraging some of that predictability. We also want to start reducing those war room costs by even more and the total cost of ownership of the applications.
Yeah, so before we leave this slide, if we go back to our story about the outbound deliveries and the advanced shipment notifications, you'll remember that if a customer doesn't receive the advanced shipment notification, they can't deal with the goods when they arrive, right? And so we've focused heavily on identifying all of the steps in the process that could impact that advanced shipment notification, that outbound delivery from being received by our customer. Because our focus, especially this entire year at 3M, has been on customer experience. We need to find ways to give our customers a better experience when they work with 3M. And we've been able to, through building what we call end-to-end monitoring scenarios, we've been able to identify the failure points and provide value to our customers, business operations, so that they can solve the problem when the problem happens. We've had many experiences where, and I could count them more than two hands, where they'll come to us with a new request for an end-to-end monitor, and they know they have a certain number of, I'm going to say millions of dollars of business that they're not sure where it is in that process, but it's stuck somewhere. And because of the siloed organizations that Nate talked about earlier, our only way of finding it in the past has been to launch a ticket at the first team, who sends it to the second team, who also sends it to the, and the ticket travels because we have 5 or 6 teams that have to look at different applications, right? Whether it's web methods or SAP PI or within ECC, or if you have to get to a specific, somebody with specific access to data within SAP even. And so the complexity of dealing with that issue is solved by building a simple dashboard that we show to our customer and we say, at what point do you care? Because if you tell me what the threshold is, I will tell you when you have that problem and you can solve it right away. So what's next at 3M? We've really just scratched the surface. The model that we showed you on the slide for our outbound deliveries, as I said, was our first one. It is the model that we're going to use to extend for all the rest of outbound deliveries and inbound deliveries and then advanced shipment notifications. We plan to build on top of that a higher level monitor, as you want to call it, that will allow management to know, hey, if things are green at a high level, I don't even need to look at the lower level. So we'll be doing a lot of work with ITSI. But as I said earlier, before we can move our customers into ITSI, we first have to help them understand their data. And sometimes as we help them understand their data, we also have to help them understand their support process. We've actually uncovered within our organization opportunities for, let's call them enhancements in the support process being used by our application teams. Enhancements that, again, save 3M many, many hours of impact. And then we also plan to spend a lot of our effort working, as Nate said, creating more automated resolutions within the SAP environment. Any of you that work with SAP know what it means to call SAP a black box, because it really is. And there is a strong brick wall around that black box. Getting anything in or out of SAP means you work with one of their APIs. Don't ask me ever to go at my database and get to SAP data. We don't do that, and you never should. But if you go through an API, you can do anything, and that's what PowerConnect does. It works within SAP to get at the SAP data. Every piece of data that you have in SAP, whether it's business data, operational data, metadata, anything that's there, they can get it. They weren't able to get everything I wanted the day I installed it, but they're getting me more and more every time I ask for it.
The next thing we really want to start working on is rolling out Phantom more. So one big part of our organization is we want to start standardizing on Phantom for automation, whether that be just SAP or even outside of SAP. So rolling that out so we can do more automation with SAP by using Phantom, but also into more of our organization of saying, hey, we want to start doing more infrastructure automation with Phantom. The next thing also is Phantom for operations. So today, we actually have two different instances of Phantom, one for mainly security and then one for our operations side. We want to start using Phantom more on that operational side, more than just automating the creation of VMs, but also expanding disks if we need to from an alert from ITSI, and getting more teams and using that and rolling that out, as well as, again, focusing on the SAP area. So,
really appreciate that you joined us for this conversation today. We're leaving some time here at the end for any questions that you may have. I want to just point out that there was a reason why we decided we wanted to present here today, and that reason really is you guys. We've reached out and talked to a number of other people over the past several weeks that are thinking about getting on this same path and being on this same journey. I've found working with RHONDOS and Brave New World, some partners that are really responsive to my needs and are helping us solve problems. But that's not quite enough. I want them helping more people, and I want more people putting more demands on them for things that are important, because then when they deliver for you, it goes into their product and then I get it, right? So there's a reason that I want to kind of build a community around this idea of Splunking SAP. And I hope that becomes a terminology that we can start using a lot, because Splunking SAP is the way that we're going to get to a true AI ops operational support model in an SAP world. And I don't know about you guys, I don't think my SAP systems are going away anytime soon. Questions are open, the floor is yours. Yes, please.
So Splunk deployment, so that's actually a really good question. And we actually, the best person to answer it is Gabe right back there with, Gabe, we pull in 10 terabytes a day for our Splunk instance. About how much is SAP data today? Not quite a terabyte. And then how big is our Splunk instance overall? Okay, 20 indexers, 11 search heads. Okay, so.
I get an interesting report emailed to me once a week that I believe is accurate, and that report tells me that we ingest between 80 and 100 gigabytes a day of SAP data. Now, I think there may be some kind of squeezing of the data, right? I know PowerConnect does some work for us. We're not just copying tables, right? You really can't just copy tables out of SAP. SAP doesn't store things in the database in a way that replicating tables is going to be helpful to us. We need to timestamp the specific data that we need as we extract it, so that when we put it into Splunk, it's useful for Splunk query. Any questions? Yep.
How big is your SAP deployment?
Big, I guess. Yeah.
Big?
Yeah.
In production, I have 27 different flavors of SAP, and I could start naming a bunch of them, but people would recognize ECC, supplier relationship management,
EWM,
logistics. Yeah, we've got extended warehouse managing is our logistics system, BW on HANA, and oh yes, before anybody asks, PowerConnect installs as an add-on inside of SAP. So you use Saint, the Saint transaction, to install it into SAP, and that means that you can install it into any SAP system. It goes into BW on HANA just as well as it goes into ECC on DB2, which is what we run. It'll run on your Oracle. Just like SAP doesn't care what your database is, therefore we don't care. PowerConnect doesn't care what your database is because it lives inside SAP. So anyway, 26. We have 26 production SAP systems. Largest one being ECC, which is slightly under 20 terabytes after we've been doing some archiving. We really would like to pull that back down to about 10 terabytes, and I think with about 15 more years of archiving, we might get there.
Yeah.
Put it on HANA.
Yeah.
That's why we want it down to 10 terabytes. Anything else? Yes?
Are you guys really building custom services, or are you reusing one? So do you have like a template, and then you expand from that, or is every use case?
Within ITSI. Okay, so the question is if we're building custom services inside ITSI. At this point, we are building custom services for everything we built into ITSI. Our goal has been to get our CMDB cleaned up to the point where we could replicate our CMDB contents into ITSI and then build our ITSI models off of that. We're working through that as a major project right now. Yep. Down here. So we do have SAP Solution Manager at 3M. We use it for a lot of different things. It is being used for our solution documentation, for our implementation. It's being used for charm. And I currently have an operations control center that is running a number of monitors through Solution Manager. For consistency's sake, we are in the process of converting all of those into Splunk so that we can have everything in one place.
Also use the SAP PowerConnect to extract the information from the Solution Manager to Sap?
Okay, so again, because PowerConnect can be installed into any SAP system, it could be installed into Solution Manager. We have not done that. And we did it specifically to avoid the complexity of having to extract from Solution Manager data that was extracted from another system. So instead, we put PowerConnect into each of the SAP systems and have it send the data directly to Splunk. Yep. It's faster, right? And so we can be more responsive to the changes that happen within the system.
And no duplicated data.
Yep.
Anything else?
Do you have any Oracle deployments at 3M and the process of also doing the same minus the DB connections?
So I'll start answering by saying that, yeah. So the question was, do we have any Oracle deployments? Or is that specific to SAP? Or do you mean specific to SAP or any Oracle at all?
Or just Oracle in general?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'll just start with our SAP runs on DB2. But the complexity of our applications application landscape at 3M is such that if a technology exists, we probably run it, including Oracle. We have a number of applications that run on Oracle. We have thousands and thousands of SQL databases.
Yeah.
We have hundreds and hundreds of DB2 for SAP. And I would come back over here to Gabe and ask, we'll bounce the question to him, are we ingesting Oracle data today? Okay, so we are using DB Connect to get Oracle data in. And again, this goes to the strategy of trying to have everything in one place. Up until last year when I came to Conf, I had not found any single place where we could aggregate all monitoring, all operational data to be able to do what we're trying to do now, right? And so our Splunk heavy forwarders are going on all of our OSs. They're going into our databases with DB Connect. Yeah, so we're working on solving the overall data center problem, right? Because you never know where your next, I'm an operations manager. I don't know what the next phone call is going to be, what caused that phone call to wake me up, right? And so I want to monitor everything I possibly can and avoid that phone call. So let me pass this to Dave for a minute, and let's see if you had a couple of things you wanted to share. Can we have the mic turned on?
Is this mic live? Can you turn this on for me? Almost. There he is. Good morning, everybody. Hey, was part of that question about Oracle applications? Was that part of that question? Yeah. And that's going to be a different discussion, but entirely doable in the same context, right? One of the easy things about Oracle applications is the data is not quite so cryptic, but the application environment is equally difficult to understand. Yeah? Anything else? Right?
Awesome.
So at the end, I'm going to ask one last question. Does anybody think this is relevant for your organization? Awesome.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You've got my email and Nate's email if you want to stay in touch. We definitely want to build a community around this, and we'll be engaged.
Cool.
Brant.
Maybe for a question for Dave, how could you engage with Splunk around this use case?
Right. So one of the things that we've been doing is working really hard with the local sales teams that you're working with. You know, their experience or their understanding of the infrastructure that supports your SAP instances, that's their business. They know how to do that stuff. But understanding the complexities of dealing with the part of your organization that manages SAP and the SAP basis teams and those kinds of things, that's new language, right? So we're working really hard to help them understand how to have this conversation with you, and we'll forward that through the organization, make sure that they get the right kind of support to help you work with that in your organization. So just ask, and we'll make sure we get the right people to come walk through this conversation with you. Right?
Awesome. Good luck on your journey, everyone.
All right.